But Daniel, speaking of things with questionable source material,
Yes.
Richard Meyer's indie comic book, Mind Your Business.
Okay, so I've been curious about this one, because a lot of Meyer's books, especially his, the smaller ones can be interesting. Like the Ballad of No, for instance.
Yeah, Ballad of No is the first one that came to mind, where and it's actually in the same continuity as that with the same artist.
Okay.
In fact, there's a sample of the interior art. So it's a black and white comic that Richard Meyer came out with. Well, he funded it a couple years back and shipped it out. I want to say late last year. I've had it sitting on my shelf for a bit. Maybe earlier this year. He kind of tends to get behind on his comics. I would honestly say that if I ever review one of his comics and it sounds interesting to you, wait for him to do one of his Zach Friday sales, because you know that he's basically just moving existing inventory. So you should get it fairly fast.
Yeah.
This one I didn't enjoy nearly as much as Ballad of No. And so what I'll say is that, well, I said, speaking of questionable source material, it's spawned from a meme at the time called Mind Your Business, where people would just like accost each other in short YouTube or TikTok videos. Like, hey, what are you doing? Mind your business.
Yeah.
That Zach watched a lot of.
Yeah.
Or Meyer watched a lot of. And then the other thing it was inspired by was he kept saying, it's okay to just have Batman punch a guy who was stealing a TV. Because where the story starts is you have this TikTok influencer who his shtick is that he finds these old candy bars that haven't been made for 2 years and eats them to see if they're still good, which is already a strange premise. Yeah. And he decides he needs a new gimmick because they're just about out of these candy bars, and the last of them were bought up. And he comes across a young man who, actually, I guess a guy his own age, who's stealing a TV, and he decides that he's going to try to stop him for clout ? And this ends up leading into a conspiracy where the TV was bought by somebody, and the two of them team up, and the conspiracy is like a bunch of extremists of some sort who are being paid by, I believe, the Taliban. Yeah, the Taliban to sabotage them.
Has Zach been listening to too much Alex Jones?
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Well, the Taliban they're trying to come after us, and they bought this TV, and they're
yeah. And then it ends with like what they were saving up the money for. Like what the guy was stealing TV for was to send his friend to Ukraine to serve in like the volunteer corps. And the friend does not appear until the last page. In fact, this is the friend getting to Ukraine and introducing himself to some of the soldiers on the last page. And then the very last page is Zach kind of going through it, and just a conversation with a hypothetical reader who's frustrated with what's going on, as if he knew that this idea was dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it's weird for somebody who made his career out of saying that people like shouldn't try to write smarter than they actually are.
Yeah.
That he kind of got up his own butt with this, as the nicest way I can put it.
Yeah. Ooh.
So now I'll say the art is nice, though I did notice some anatomy and perspective issues in places. Like if you can see his hand in the back there, I noticed a few issues like that where like that one's a matter of foreshortening, but I would see like hands that were that size in a couple of panels where there wasn't that sort of foreshortening. Or is the background, is it for lengthening? Whatever it is. Perspective.
Yeah.
it's very much a Shaggy Dog story, and it's weird why the guy decides to get involved with this. It's weird why the two of them team up in the middle after he had basically been harassing the thief the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like it's just like the chase for clout, and I feel like the point of it is that the chase for clout is stupid because I think this guy who went to Ukraine and oh, by the way, on the last page, Zach said that oh yeah, also he died 2 weeks later, mortar strike or something like that.
Oh,
I think that if I were to try to assign a point to this, it might be that people do stupid things for clout that can
yeah.
just get them in trouble. But the thesis is not well developed.
Mm.
Also, the main characters from Ballad of No and Pandemic show up.
Yeah.
I would say that the saddest thing about this whole, like, this is called the Theosophy universe, which he admits that doesn't actually have anything to do with what Theosophy actually means, which was just a cultic movement from the early 20th century created by this sham psychic called Madame Blavatsky.
I think I've heard of her.
Yeah, she had interesting beliefs. Very influential occultist. Also a virulent racist, but you know, it's
Oh yeah.
it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But like the title came to him in a dream, and I think that if he just had a more consistent release schedule, he could actually develop the universe into something cool.
Yeah.
Because so the premise of Theosophy is, oh, we have this, and this has never been illuminated in any of the comics, mind you. This is just me remembering things from like him doing videos where he talked about it. So if you're a reader, who doesn't actually follow his YouTube channel for some reason, you've just read 3 semi-related stories that just are a series of Shaggy Dog stories. The underlying thesis of this universe is that there are these families who are basically like Illuminati, but with like Game of Thrones houses, I guess. And every so often they have a challenge to see who will run the world for the next 100 years or so. And the premise is that you have one of the families who says, you know, it's very expensive to run the world, that we don't feel like spending that much money, but we have to compete. So it's them coming up with a team of ringers to try and lose without it being too obvious that they're throwing.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I actually really love that idea. I think that if you gave that idea to a mangaka, in a few years you'd have a really kick-ass anime.
Yeah.
But because Zach works kind of slow, because the artist, let's see what's the name of the artist again.
Wasn't it Kelsey Shannon?
Kelsey Shannon, thank you.
Yeah.
Kelsey Shannon is a good. I actually really like Kelsey Shannon's black and whites here in this one and in Ballad of No.
Yeah.
I think that if Zach just doubled down and got Shannon on some sort of consistent schedule and they came out with 6 of these a year and actually developed the underlying premise of the universe,
yeah,
you would have something cool here. As it is, it's basically a failed episode of The Twilight Zone, basically, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like to me. And the Ballad of No reminded me of that too. It reminded me of like a one-off episode of either The Twilight Zone or maybe The Outer Limits, or something along those lines.
Right. Just No had a much stronger central premise.
Yeah.